So the first transfer window of the summer is over, but there's much more still to come, and we can discuss this in more depth now with the football finance expert, Kieran Maguire. Kieran, great to talk to you. Really interesting time to talk to you as well, isn't it? Let's start by talking about Manchester United, shall we? Because they've signed Matheus Cunha already this summer. They've made offers for Brian and Burmo. They're also linked with Victor Gyökeres. A lot of people will be asking, how can they afford to spend so much despite not having European football, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe saying that they're in debt?
Remember that when a club signs a player, the cost is actually spread over the life of the contract. So in the case of Matheus Cunha, it's £1 million a month. So it's not £60 million that's going out of the PSR calculation. We also need to remember that this is Manchester United, so sponsors still want to be associated with them. Fans will still flock to Old Trafford. And I think they will be anticipating a better season in the Premier League next season. And I think the third main issue is all of the focus has been on Manchester United PLC's accounts, which are registered in New York. And there we saw a loss of £131 million last year. But that is not the company which is used for PSR purposes, because you've got to be based in the UK. And it looks as if Manchester United have been using another company called Red Football, and the losses there were only £36 million. So therefore, they're £100 million better off for PSR purposes on the back of that. Manchester United still a destination club as far as many players are concerned. Yeah, they want to play in front of Old Trafford because it's an iconic stadium. It's a fanatical fan base and all of the positives that brings. So that can offset perhaps some of the financial issues.
Right, how about Chelsea then? Another team that often gets spoken about when it comes around to transfers. They seem to be well clear of PSR requirements, despite the amount that they've spent since Todd Bowley's consortium bought the club. How is that the case?
That's right. Chelsea have got the most expensive squad as far as Premier League is concerned, at around about £1.5 billion. That's at least £350 million more than anybody else has invested in players. What Chelsea don't get credit for is A, their ability to sell players, and B, a lot of those players tend to be academy players, so therefore they're pure profits. We've seen Mason Mount, Conor Gallagher, Billy Gilmore, Figaro Tomori and so on leave Chelsea and generate all of these profits. Chelsea, remember, when they initially started to expand their squad under Todd Bowley, they did it on the 8 and 9 year contracts. So again, that's spreading the cost over a longer period of time before those rules were outlawed by both UEFA and the Premier League. And they've got a £250 million boost at least through the sale of the women's team, the sale of the car parks and the sale of the hotel, which can go into the transfer budget. So you put all of those factors together, Chelsea are in a fantastic position from a PSR point of view.
So Chelsea seem to have a bit of headroom then, Kieran, but on the flip side, Aston Villa don't seem to have that same luxury. Do you think they could be in trouble if they don't sell again?
I think of the 20 Premier League clubs, Villa are the ones who we're most concerned about. Last season, when they did qualify for the Champions League, for every £100 of revenue that Aston Villa brought in, they spent £91 on wages. Those players will have had contract step-ups for qualifying for the Champions League this season. And remember, Villa have done very well in that competition, so that will be a plus. And they have sold some players as well in both last summer market and the January one. But I think there is still a perception that Villa will have to box clever. And of all of the clubs under pressure to sell players by the 30th of June, I guess they're the ones who are the club that gives the most attention because their spending in the last couple of years before getting Europe was so extensive.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Newcastle were in a similar position, weren't they, previously? They had some PSI issues last summer. They had to sell Elliot Anderson, Jan Cooper, Minter. What are they looking like at the moment? Have they got themselves back into a better position to spend now?
Yes, Newcastle United have had 3 very quiet windows by their standards. And I think the good news for Newcastle is that season 2021, because PSR is assessed over a 3-year period, season 2021, 21-22, when Newcastle lost over £70 million, that drops out of the equation on the 1st of July. So therefore, I think Newcastle are in a much stronger position this summer to compete once again in the market. They don't have as free a rein as the likes of Chelsea, but they are still in a far stronger position than they were 12 months ago. And I don't see any pressure on the club with that need to sell players before they start to bring anybody in. It could be that there will be some player trading. They certainly have freed up some of the spots on the wage budget, but there's not that very, very significant pressure that we saw, as you rightly say, with Anderson and Minte leaving last June.
I suppose we should mention the Club World Cup, shouldn't we? Because that starts this weekend. There are some serious financial incentives for clubs to do well in this, aren't there?
Very much so. As far as the European clubs are concerned, effectively it's around about a $50 million entry fee that they're getting, which is far greater than the other clubs from other associations which are competing in the Club World Cup. If you win it, you're probably looking at a total of $100 million as the overall prize. And I think that's why we've seen the likes of Real Madrid, Chelsea and Manchester City all being so active before the tournament starts, because there's a huge financial incentive for them to do well, and therefore they want to have as strong a squad as possible once the competition starts, because they want to go as far as they can, because the financial rewards are so significant.
And finally, Kieran, we actually had your mate Kevin Day on, your podcast partner, just a few minutes ago. Of course, we were talking about Crystal Palace and the possibility that they might not be in the Europa League. Hopefully, from their point of view, they will be in the Europa League. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I know it's not necessarily transfer related, but what are your thoughts on Palace being in the Europa League or not?
Well, if we take a look at what's happened when other paperwork stroke administrative errors have taken place historically, what UEFA have tended to do is to say that this is a back office issue. They'll then look to see whether the club has gained anything on the pitch as a result of those decisions. And there appears to be no evidence to suggest that that's been the case at Crystal Palace. So Barcelona, for example, were given a financial penalty. They were given a fine for their most recent breach of the PSR rules or their equivalent. So if you are going to sanction Crystal Palace, if the most appropriate penalty would be a financial penalty. The club has gained nothing in terms of its ability to play football through what's happened. So therefore, it seems inconsistent to ban them from the competition.
So you've been reassuring Kevin then? You've been keeping him calm, yeah?
I've been doing my very best. I mean, from a legal point of view, you would say that the substance of the situation is that Palace have done nothing wrong, whereas the legal framework would suggest yes, it has. I think certainly the noises I'm getting from people I talk to in European football, there's no desire for Crystal Palace to be banned from the competition. And even as a Brighton fan, I think that they deserve to do it because they won the FA Cup and the reward should be to play in Europe.